All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. I'm tired, but I've got some coffee. I got the UT alumni mug right here for the folks watching on youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast, and for those watching on YouTube right now, first, thank you, because we are well over 1,000 subs now. Just cranking out really, really strong view numbers each and every day there. So I'm really excited about where we're going on the YouTube front. So I appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, and all that good stuff, as we're just we're hitting our stride on that front. So that's good. But you know what else is good? Everything School HQ, Matt Green. When I talk about how obnoxious it's going to be for me today, like it's not new to you. Like the situation of what's been going on in Rocky Top since I've been here, since Danny White arrived, all across the board. We have some actual, like, just full on, not even anecdotal stuff here. I just have a fact for you. Only school since 1998 to win a BCS New Year's Six Bowl, advance to a men and women basketball Sweet 16, advance to a men's and women's college World Series in the same academic year. It's the Tennessee Volunteers. This past academic calendar year, last night, late into the evening, the Tennessee Volunteers shut out the Southern Miss Golden Eagles on the road in Hattiesburg to make the College World Series for the second time in 3 years for Tony Vitello's bunch. Things are looking good. Fifth best odds. We'll see an all-time great matchup with Paul Skeens and LSU versus probably Andrew Lindsay and company. Chase Burns touching 102 on the speedometer over there, the radar gun for last night, as they just blew past the Southern Miss Golden Eagles and survived, even with weather betraying them. Should have been hosting an absolute joke and monstrosity that Tennessee had to go to Hattiesburg over the weekend, but it didn't matter. It just motivated Tennessee and Tony Vitello's bunch even more because, like Peyton Manning said, Omaha for the Tennessee Volunteers. So it's all smiles, all good vibes up here on Rocky Top. I'm feeling good, man. I love college baseball, and I love how this team has fought. They were preseason number 2, went through hell early on this year, and they fought all the way back and really turned the corner at the best possible time. And we'll see what happens. They're in the Final 8 College World Series. It can get weird, and it's anybody's game. And I'm pumped for what should be an electric weekend and week for the Tennessee Volunteers. Matt Green, fellow University of North Georgia alumni. How are you?
Yeah, I thought you were wrapping that up at some point. You just kind of kept going. Yeah, congratulations to the Tennessee Vols. Definitely, they are definitely pretty good at everything. So I will give them that. It's obviously the athletic department should be proud. It's a big time accomplishment, but making the NCAA tournament, making the women's tournament, that's an accompleffment.
Sweet 16, not just making Sweet 16 and the men and women.
That includes Sweet 16 in both of those?
Yes, they did.
Okay, that's definitely a more significant kind of achievement. The BCS New Year's Six Bowl, I don't feel like that's the same accomplishment it once was, but it's a good season. They definitely had a very good season. No one can take that away. Very good in all kinds of sports. So, big time accomplishment before. I'm ashamed to admit that Chase Thomas did get me to hate watch the Tennessee Southern Miss game. I had to pull up YouTube TV to get the ESPNU access, but I was watching it.
Last night or all weekend? What are we talking about here?
I didn't watch it all weekend. I would just check on it periodically, kind of. I'll get it in my rotation. I'd forget about it, and then because I saw they won game 1, right? Southern Miss. I will say, because I know you were worked up about them being in Knoxville, I saw a stat that said Southern Miss's average attendance is higher than Tennessee's record attendance in their stadium.
Well, they have a bigger stadium. They have more seats.
So they do have a crowd, good facilities, and all that.
Well, they don't have a good facility. They had no visitor locker room. So Tennessee has that. So Tennessee was under the metal bleachers.
That's just a little home. That's just a little gamesmanship right there.
I mean, if you say so. I mean, Kentucky embarrassed themselves over the weekend 2 weeks ago with the regionals, where they had them staying in dorms, like these Truett McConnell style dorms for the
True
other
at
team.
McConnell.
Yeah, that's what it
Nice
looks like.
name drop.
Yeah, hey.
Yeah, you think Brett Favre could get some road locker rooms for the baseball team, but who knows? But yeah, if you hadn't got me watching, I would have missed that Stanford Texas game. I was watching that live last night. Just a devastating way to lose, just losing the ball in the lights for the game winning, which should have been the third out of the inning. And what was that, the bottom of the ninth, bottom of the 10th?
It was bottom of the ninth.
Yeah, that was heartbreak.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember, but yeah, I think that was heartbreaking for Texas for sure. But
that's the worst way to lose possible. Like someone sent it to me originally because obviously I'm dialed into Tennessee there, and I'm just like, they're like, you have to see how Texas just lost, and I was like, okay, let's see. And then you actually see it, and just the heartbreak from the catcher, and like what they thought was getting out of the inning, and just that when you think about worse ways to lose a baseball game after 60 plus games. You fight like hell. You're in the College World Series on the line. To lose in that fashion, I could not imagine.
Yeah, because it's like a walk-off home run. Like, that pitcher is obviously devastated. Just gave up a walk-off home run. He feels like he just lost the game, But someone did something to actually win the game, and they hit a ball 400 feet or whatever. For just a routine pop-up to right field, dude just didn't see it. Like, that was rough.
Well, also shout out to our alma mater for the undergrad, the University of North Georgia Lady Nighthawks softball team, winning Division II, the softball title.
Yeah, national title.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, that's the second one. I think the first one was like 2015, 2016. It was like while we were there, I'm pretty sure. But build a powerhouse in Dahlonega and women's softball.
Look, I mean, when they made the name change to the Nighthawks and Nigel came into the fold, that's when we knew the athletic department was turning the corner there at North Georgia. Speaking of North Georgia and Nigel the Nighthawk, he has some news items for us on this very show, Matt Green. But before we get into that, your Green Line side of the week, how many days until college football when folks are listening to this on Wednesday morning?
We are officially 80 days till college football season. If you are listening bright and early on Wednesday morning, like we know you are. And for the number 80, that is the all-time NCAA interception record held by, you got a guess here? Who's thrown 80 interceptions, most in NCAA history? I'll give you 5 seconds.
You got to tell me the conference.
I don't even know what conference they're currently in. Honestly, I couldn't even tell you what conference they're currently in. I know where they were in the WAC at the time that this happened.
Timmy Chang?
Timmy Chang of Hawaii. First year, well, now going into a second year head coach now, Timmy Chang. But yeah, threw 117 touchdowns, but 80 picks, first all time.
Also the current head coach of the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors.
Yeah, exactly. What conference are they in now? Are they West Coast? They're West Coast
Mountain
Conference
West.
in
No,
basketball, right?
They're Mountain West.
You sure about that? Let's look. I got Timmy Chang pulled up right here. We can.
I thought they were in the Mountain West.
They are. Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
They've been Mountain West since 2012. I should probably know that. We're doing a college football podcast here,
you
but
as the CFP
I'm telling you,
over here, Matt Green, and you
it's
just
college
gave
basketball. Are they in the West Coast Conference? Like I feel like I'm not making that up.
Well, I don't even know why you're more like locked in Hawaii basketball than Hawaii football here, Matt Green. Like why is that I could not tell you. I honestly could not tell you one Hawaii basketball highlight ever. Like I don't know if I've ever actually seen a minute of Hawaii
It was
basketball.
just, I feel like that's probably fair. I feel like it was just significant to me because I was like, they weren't always in the West Coast Conference, but I don't even know who I'm thinking of. BYU's, their basketball team's in the West Coast Conference. Maybe that's who I was confusing with Hawaii. I don't know, but it's not important. But what is important is we are 80 days. This Saturday will be 11 weeks till college football season, so it's right around the corner.
Who's the best 80
folks.
of all time for Georgia?
Oh man, put me on the spot. Off the top of my head, I think of Corey Allen.
Okay.
He had the I don't know if you remember the first overtime game in SEC history, Georgia Auburn back in like '96.
Okay.
He like caught it with like no time left. I don't know if you remember this game. Absolute just meltdown from an Auburn standpoint. So Georgia's got it like third, whatever, and some, I don't know what the time's running down, right? The clock is running, less than 10 seconds left. Bobo gets sacked at like the 25-yard line, and it's like sacked with like 7-8 seconds. Clock's running, no timeouts. Like that's game over. Like they're not going to be able to get back to the line of scrimmage. An Auburn player, defensive player, picks up the ball and just starts running. And then so like, whoa, you can't run. So they stop the clock because like they had to bring the ball back. So that's the only reason Georgia was able to run one more play. They throw it to Corey Allen. He like catches it like on top of like the Auburn DB, like at the 1. Like he like lands on him and like rolls into the end zone. And then the game went to like 5-6 overtimes. Like it was an insane. That's the game where UGA tried to bite the Auburn player and everything. Yeah. But yeah, Corey Allen, I can't believe I'm not thinking of an 80 off the top of my, like in like the modern era. Mario Raley was like a really obscure player. Man, I hope I'm not leaving out a good number 80 for Georgia.
There really haven't been that many.
Who's at 80 for Tennessee?
Well, I mean, Ramel Keaton right now, who's an absolute legend. What do you think? There aren't a lot of 80s. Like, I mean, literally when I'm thinking like 80, I am thinking like Ramel Keaton like jumped out where I'm like, you haven't seen 80 very often. Tennessee Vols number 80, because now you're putting me on the spot. I mean,
I was gonna try to find who the current. Yeah, I don't know. The current 80 for Georgia is a walk-on, so I'm not thinking of many good 80s.
Eric Parker is one. He was okay. Eric Parker. All-time 80s, because I'm looking at this. I'm like, there really aren't. Britton Colquitt was an 80. I guess he's probably in that. I mean, he was fine.
Had to confirm that Corey Allen was number 80 after all this, but yeah, he was.
There really is not. I have the full number 80 list now. There's not one big. I mean, Ramel Keaton is going to be the best number 80 ever at Tennessee.
Okay.
So there's where we're at. Not a lot of 80s for whatever reason at Tennessee and Georgia. Speaking of those Georgia Bulldogs, Matt Green, you picked up another defensive lineman commitment, a 4-star this week. What do you make of the latest addition to the Dogs in the recruiting trail this week?
Just keeping doing what they're doing, basically. I'm blanking on his name right now. Do you have in front of you Jordan Thomas? Is that his name?
Yes, Jordan Thomas, yeah.
Yeah, he's like 100th ranked player or so. I saw two different, I think 24/7 had him as like 6'5", like 295, but On 3 had him as like 6'5", 325. So I feel like a guy who's 325 coming out of high school, that's like a nose tackle. Like that guy's going to be huge. So I think he's more of a defensive end, defensive tackle, kind of playing in the outside of the 3. I want to say that's a 5 technique. In Georgia's system. But yeah, so I think he's just, the way I've heard him described is just like those athletic dudes on the defensive line is basically how Georgia's built the powerhouse program they've built, and he's another one of those. And so he's top 100 player from New Jersey.
Yeah, but the other one that, I mean, I'm sure you enjoyed over the weekend was Chauncey Bowens flipping from Florida to Georgia. So 4-star running back, 5'11", like 220, just all lower half. When you looked at him, it's like, oh, this is just going to be like one of those impossible dudes to tackle. Like Georgia, it's weird. They have a lot of depth when you're looking at the future. And I mean, this is probably the most uncertain Georgia's backfield has looked and during the Kirby Smart era, not in terms of talent, just in terms of a bunch of unknowns. Like it's just, you could see any number of guys popping and being the lead backer.
Well, I would say it's more of there's no star. So there's no one who's like just a stud, even as good as Kenny McIntosh, I think. But I think all these guys are fair. Kendall Milton is just like, this guy's got to stay healthy. But I think Kendall Milton, you kind of know what he is. It's hard to know exactly what he is because he can't stay healthy, because, I mean, this guy could be a true workhorse potentially. But I mean, you've seen what Dejon Edwards is over a year and a half of getting ticks, basically. Like, he's good. He's not like a transcendent running back or anything, but he's a really solid player. And then Branson Robinson really flashed as a true freshman, and Chris Peel, I want to say, I think that was his name. He was also a true freshman now. That was who was also a true freshman last year that was creating a buzz before he tore his ACL in fall practice. So I think they have a lot of dudes that can contribute. I think it's just like there might not be a star, but it's like running back also feels like that position that, like, I don't know if there's a wins above replacement, that it just seems very minimal, that just an average SEC running back, if you're giving them good holes, like, they can get yards.
Well, you didn't even mention, like, you have Roderick Robinson, who's a 4-star freshman, and I think he might play and might be in the fold there. I mean, he's going to be a really good player. And then Andrew Paul, another guy who got hurt last year, who I think Georgia...
That's who I was thinking. I said Chris Peel. Andrew Paul, that's the name I was thinking.
Well, I mean, when you look at that, that's 5 guys right there who could all be big factors. I mean, are you betting on Kendall Milton being the guy, or do you, like, if you had to bet right now who leads the Dawgs running back room in the fall, where are you leading at the moment?
That's a good question. By the way, Chris Peel is a safety that's coming into Georgia this year. He's going to be a true freshman. I feel like if I'm betting, it's hard to bet on Kendall Milton's health because this guy has just been hurt so much. But he feels like the clear best running back in this current group to me. Like, Dejon Edwards seems like a nice piece, like a nice change of pace guy. But if Dejon Edwards is the leading rusher, for one, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing for Georgia. I think it probably means Kendall Milton got hurt at some point, or it means, there's a couple guys that are around 600 yards or something like that, and maybe he's the best one. I don't think Dejon Edwards leading means that he's a breakout, like, all SEC type of player. I feel like it's probably more of a downside. But I'm not going to bet on Branson Robinson. That seems like a hot take, but he seems like he's the best. He seems like, I did just say Kendall Milton was the best. I just couldn't Branson Robinson seems like he has the highest upside. I should put it that way. Like, dude runs hard, and he's built like a damn bodybuilder. So I don't know. I think, I really don't know. I think I could see us Georgia with 3 guys all around 6, 7, 800 yards or something, kind of like they did a year ago. But I guess if I have to pick, Kendall Milton, he should be the guy. I think that gets, if there's a candidate to have like a 1,000-yard season, I think it's Kendall Milton.
It's interesting. I'd probably go Branson Robinson and Dejon Edwards as the third down back, is my guess. And then Kendall Milton being intermediate. When he is healthy one week, he gets featured. I just don't think there's at a certain point, like, we're now his senior year. Like, the dude, it's not like it gets better health-wise for running backs the longer they're hanging around.
Well, Zamir White, I mean, his senior year was definitely his best year, and he was a guy that was absolutely snake bitten by injuries. So
that's a good point.
I think you're right, though. I think Branson Robinson does have a lot of potential. Like, and running backs, they don't last long, So it's like you're not just gonna like, oh well, the guy is older, so he's gonna play more. It's like, no, if Branson Robinson's good, he's gone after 2024. So you got to go ahead and get him on the field and see what he's made of.
For sure. Matt Green, USF approved, their board of trustees approved a new on-campus football stadium that's been in the works for a really long time. 30,000 people, 35,000 seat campus, $340 million budget for this. It's supposed to be done by 2026. There were some really interesting anecdotes in this, where I was reading Pete Thamel's reporting on this on ESPN.com, and it's fascinating, not just because Alex Golish, my guy, former offensive coordinator at Tennessee, now the head coach down there in Bull Country. You and I, we grew up in the Matt Grothe era. We've seen the best of Quentin Flowers and company. Like, they've had some success. Intermediate throughout the years. The Jeff Scott era did not go well. But it seems like there is some real passion, some motivation, because you look at what UCF has built, right? Now they're in the Big 12, and they're still surviving with the big boys. They just continue to grow. Biggest school in the state of Florida. Have an on-campus experience. Gus Malzahn's doing really good work there. I mean, I am very curious to see what happens with South Florida, because it seems like if you read the piece, it's like they're doing a lot of this. It's like, hey, pay a bunch now, like be in the red, and then bet on, because you have this facility, because you've built this out more, because you're not having to play at the Buck Stadium anymore, you feel like more of a big-time sleeping giant in a fertile recruiting area, fun offense, which should be with Alex Golish. And, hey, like this could be the next like Big 12 team, right? Like I wonder, this is what I would posit to you. Do you think we're going to see more of this? Because I know Memphis has been rumored to do a lot of renovations, and they're trying to get to the Big 12, but it doesn't seem like the Big 12 is all that interested in adding Memphis as of yet. I think with the Power 2 breaking away the way that they have, and the Big 12 being the only like open for business conference at the moment, I wonder what that means for the immediate future of college football, where it's going to be this, like, we're going to see the different arms races where all these schools that are kind of on that border of being serious about competing and staying around, and just I'm very curious to see, when does the money just become too crazy where they're like, look, we would love to stay competitive and in this world, but like we can't keep this going. Like, this is unsustainable. We're not going to be able to catch up. But I think we're going to see more of these kind of schools that are on that border go all in on football to try and get that invite to those last few power conferences that have this crazy amount of TV money and all that stuff. I'm just curious who's the next domino, and if this actually pays off for USF. Do they get into the Big 12 in 2026, 2027, and they are a big-time program that can keep this thing humming, or are they left by the wayside after doing all of this, where they're still not given an invite, and it's like, okay, great, you have this gigantic stadium, expensive, and you got left out in the cold, and you can't even make the playoffs. So what was all that for? It's an arms race, and I'm very curious to see how it trickles all around the country with schools that are in the USF boat. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe the ACC can be their safety. Maybe if the ACC gets dismantled, they need to get somebody else. I don't know. It's definitely a good idea. Like, it automatically legitimizes you as soon as you have your own on-campus stadium versus playing in Raymond. Is Raymond James? Is it still that name, or is it they're changing all the corporate sponsors? I can't keep up. But yeah, I mean, South Florida, it's like, it's kind of weird because Central Florida just feels like they came around after. I don't know which program actually existed first. I think South Florida started in like 98 or something, right? It's very recent, but it felt like Central Florida just kind of came on the scene and just like zoomed right past them. Like, it felt like South Florida had that, like, you're talking what was this, Matt Grothy? Like, that era, like, they were ranked number 2 in the country, right? Winning a couple of 10-win seasons, or at least one 10-win season. And then Central Florida just kind of came and went, basically. And so they have to look at Central Florida as the model that I imagine, like, why not us? Like, why... I mean, I imagine the bounce house, it doesn't hold much more than 35, 40,000, right? But but it's on campus. Oh, it might. I could be wrong about that. But just being on campus, it just creates a different atmosphere, and I think that's what college football is all about. So yeah, I can understand South Florida wanting to join that club. It just feels like the state of Florida.
It is on the main campus, by the way.
Okay, it just feels like the state of Florida is just like, how many people are going to be diehard South Florida fans? Like, who's growing up a South Florida fan? Like, yeah, you went there, so you're going to the games, like, sure. But, like, people grow up Florida Gator fans. They grow up Miami Hurricane fans, like Florida State Seminoles. Like, I don't know. It's just, can they be better than Georgia Southern? Like, I don't really know. Like, the Sun Belt, that might be where they should be, in the Fun Belt. Like, that might be the South Florida. The Fun Belt has kind of raised its level to. It's like South Florida was kind of the reject of they were in the Big East for a very small period, right? Like, the reject of the Big East, kind of never found another conference, and I don't know. They could go multiple different ways, but I guess at this point, when we have like what feels like a quote unquote super league in the works, like, yeah, if you're one of those fringe teams, it might be get in the super league or just not have football anymore. Yes. Because so if it's either have it or not have it, you want to get invite to the table,
because everything's getting closer and closer to Premier League, right? Like, everything is going towards that, where it's going to be like the 60. I mean, it won't happen. Bill Connolly had a really good piece on ESPN.com the other day, and it was about like outlandish ideas for realignment that aren't going to happen, but they should. It's like the Pac-12 should go to 90 teams, where you just expand. You take the WAC, you take the Mountain West, you just say screw it. Like, who cares? Like, the money like just like all the remaining, like there's no reason to have the Mountain West if there's gonna be a Power 2. You know what I mean? Like if we're gonna have the Power 2, everybody else should just try and consolidate as much as humanly possible to like the conferences don't mean anything at that point. Like the geography doesn't mean anything. Just expand and take whoever you want. And then I mean the relegation aspect would be amazing. Can you imagine if we had 60 something teams and then like UCF has to have this where they're like, look, if you want to be moving up to the big boys, like your facilities have to be this, you have to win a certain amount of games, you have to win this particular conference, like, and then we just see like the Rutgers of the world like on the fringes where it's like, look, USF gets bumped if you lose X amount of games. Like it won't happen, but that if there's one thing
it won't happen because Mississippi State won't agree to it.
Yeah.
You know, like the big dogs, well, the little dogs in the big conferences are like, hold on, no, fuck this. We finished last place. We got to go to the Sun Belt. No, that's not happening. How much fun
would that be? Can you imagine like if
it'd be amazing.
Like Marshall wins the Sun Belt and they take over for Mississippi State. Mississippi State has to go and win the Sun Belt for a couple of years to get back in. Like that would be incredible. That'd be so much fun.
Yeah, and I can't remember the teams I was watching, but I was watching the final day of the Premier League this year, and it was like they're like highlighting those 3 games, of like the teams trying to avoid relegation, and I can't remember the team who finished like 17. Everton, that's who it was. Like Everton had like the big second half goal, and like place is going absolute nuts because they get to stay in the Premier League. It's like 17th place, like let's go. And so it's like we're all about trying to make November games more interesting. Like that would definitely make some of those, 4 and 7 matchups, 3 and 8 matchups a lot more interesting. Yeah,
you're kicked out of the Power 2 if you can't, like, and it gives an opportunity where like USF, UCF, whoever moves into the Power 2 if they win their like. I love thinking outside the box here because realignment and all this stuff's coming, and you might as well have some fun with it if you can. Speaking of realignment, the Pac-12, still no news on what's going to happen there over the next couple weeks. We'll see when the TV deal comes about, Matt Green. But until then, we can finish our season in review, conference in review series, maybe the last one ever for the Pac-12 this summer. Look, Pac-12 was a lot of fun. They have an identity. They have the best quarterbacks in the country, all consolidated in this conference. Elite quarterback play all across the board. Even the bad teams have had really good quarterback play in different spots. And look, I'm excited to talk about this because the conference was very top heavy. Like there were some really bad teams, the Colorados, the Stanfords, the Californias of the world. But there were also like the really good ones. Like there were just a lot of like B+, A- teams in this conference in Utah, Oregon, USC, Washington, Oregon State. Like there were just a lot of really good teams at the top of this conference. And it was hard for me to kind of answer different questions here, but the first thing I want to ask you, who overachieved last year to you in the Pac-12? Who overachieved? I thought this was kind of hard.
This is kind of hard because your first gut probably wants to say Washington, like going 11-2. Like no one saw that coming at all. Definitely not what Michael Penix did. But I kind of feel like it was USC.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, I feel like USC. They didn't really seem like that good of a team. Like that defense. Were they 80th in the country defensively? And obviously Lincoln Riley brought a lot with him. But like you just kind of laid out, like this was a pretty good conference last year. So it wasn't like USC was good because there was no other good teams and they're kind of ahead of schedule. They were beating some actually good teams. Basically everybody except Utah, they were beating last year. But so I would probably say they were the most overachiever in my book.
They were dead last in pass yards allowed in the Pac-12 last year. They gave up 3,600 pass yards. Like it was just bad all across the board. Like you said, the defense was really bad and got exposed by Utah late in the year. But I think Caleb Williams was so good that it just they were ahead of schedule. They make the Pac-12 title game. I don't think a lot of people had them making it year one under Lincoln. Like people were like, hey, it's pretty good. You get Jordan Addison and company. Like you brought in a lot of guys from Oklahoma. Obviously that helps. But like this still was going to be a transition kind of year, and we'll see in year 2 what it looks like, because we love the year 2 bump for these coaches. And Lincoln, unfortunately, now is in a tough spot because I think they won too many games, and teams like people were disappointed in USC getting blown out by Utah in the Pac-12 title game. That people were like, oh, well, they wasted this Caleb Williams Heisman year, and now Caleb Williams is back. They're loaded again offensively, but you look at the defense, and I'm like, this defense was awful. Even if they make a little bit headway on the defensive side of the ball, it's not like they changed coordinators or anything like that. It's still Alex Grinch. Like, this doesn't look like a team that can make the playoff. There are better teams in this conference right now. Utah, Washington, Oregon, like just to name a couple of, maybe Oregon State, if DJ Uiagalelei is able to bounce back on the West Coast. Like, I think they overachieved, and it's going to really hurt them. We'll talk about with the coaching aspect of this, but like that just, they should not have been on the playoff bubble, like had the playoff destiny or had their playoff destiny in their hands in that moment in year 1. I think based on what they got, and it's a credit to Lincoln, but I think they're the number 1 pick for me in overachievement. I think it's the Trojans. And
I think that's a good call because like in the point you just made, because they were a win away from being in the college football playoff. Yeah. Like if they win the Pac-12 championship. So now it's like he could become a victim of his own success already in year 2, where if they don't make the Pac-12 championship, it's like this is a massive failure. And if you don't win it, it's still a failure. If you don't get to the college football playoff, I think that's what everyone assumes. Like, well, we were 11-3 last year. And so next year, like, we're going to be a little bit better and we're going to get into the playoff. Like, I think that's the natural thing you would expect as a fan. So I don't know that they actually do have that good of a roster to be expecting that. But, you know, USC does have some good players, and they've gotten more good ones since Lincoln Riley got there. So it might not be the most unrealistic expectation to think it's Pac-12 championship or bust for USC next year.
And they moved to the Big Ten, and they're going to be traveling a lot. They're going to be getting those sky miles, and they're going to go to a conference where they'll never be the favorite. And guess here's another one for USC fans who are really excited. I'm not trying to poo-poo your situation, but like one of the downsides here is you're going to be the favorite in the Pac-12 every year. Like, I get the money difference and all that. Guess how many times Rutgers, Maryland, Texas A&M, and Missouri have won their conference title since moving to a new conference?
Yeah, but you can't compare any of those teams to USC.
I think you can compare A&M. I think there actually are some similarities.
I would say one comparison, Miami. They haven't won the ACC
Miami's
since joining
another
the
one.
Conference.
That's what I'm saying. So
they're
like,
actual powerhouse. They were a powerhouse when they joined the ACC. But
right. Do you see them win the Big Ten anytime soon? Like, what does that look like when they're not the favorite going into this new super conference where they're going to be playing with the big boys? They're going to be playing in cold weather late in November and December. Like, this is a humongous year for Lincoln Riley.
And it's not even like, yeah, but you guys got to come down and play in the heat. It's like you're playing in Southern California, like the most perfect weather on earth.
It's actually great for them.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think you look at them, I feel like they're like the third or fourth best team in the Big Ten, like the moment they join the conference. Are they not? Like,
depends on what Wisconsin looks like this year. I'm curious what Luke Fickell's
obviously if Penn State were to win the division or something this year, like that's Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State are all right there together. So maybe they're fourth best, but yeah, you're right. They don't have the stranglehold on a conference anymore, but they also are in a more respected conference that, I mean, I don't know how much better those teams are at USC's best. Like right now, then yeah, they're better, but like USC's quickly like getting back to that level of talent that you're used to them getting.
For sure, but it's exciting, and it's going to just be so weird seeing USC and UCLA in the Big Ten next year. It's just going to be extremely weird.
Yeah, it was weird when you said it just now. Like, yeah, they're going to be competing for a Big Ten championship next. Like, that's just no, it's just wrong. It ain't right.
It ain't right. I mean, we'll see. I will also say this about Washington. I have to throw some Washington aspect in this. It pains me because I love Michael Penix. Kalen DeBoer was really fun with this group. One of the differences going from Jimmy Lake and Peterson before him to Kalen DeBoer, clearly there's going to be a gigantic drop-off in recruiting. Like Kalen DeBoer is a do more with less type of coach. Like Jimmy Lake was recruiting dudes. Like think about how many dudes are put in the NFL. The Byron Murphys of the world. Like they were putting secondary, Sidney Jones. They were putting corner, safety, linebackers, defensive linemen. Like UW was kind of a quiet defensive NFL powerhouse. And we're recruiting big dudes, talented dudes on that side of the ball. Now, I mean, even like the quarterback spot, like Jake Browning and coming, they were rolling all across the board. Now, Kalen DeBoer and company, I was looking through their recruiting last couple of years. They were 95th in recruiting in 2022. They have 2 commits right now in 2024 total. 2. And they're 77th. Wow. And then in 2023, Matt Green, they were 25th. So I think they with where they were and what that team was last year, because Jimmy Lake and that offense was completely broken 2 years ago. Like one of the worst offenses in college football. Michael Penix comes in, he stays healthy. And a healthy Michael Penix in that Kalen DeBoer offense was just magic. And they were a lot of fun. They're bringing back their 2 biggest receivers, so their offense should be fine for another year. What happens when Penix graduates? Because guess who's out? The 5-star quarterback, Brock Heward? I think whichever.
Sam Heward.
Sam Heward, yeah.
Brock Heward's the...
Right. There's just a lot of Hewards, like the Colquitts. There's a lot of them. And he's out. He's out like Cal Poly. He didn't even go to like a G5. He went way away.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he's gone. So I'm curious what they look like.
He was a 5-star.
Yeah, and just already out. So I look at this and I'm like, is he going to be able to keep this humming? Like, did they actually have the talent to be a playoff team last year? I think they really did, with double-digit wins in year 1 for Kalen DeBoer, set the bar very high. That because remember, UW is they're not a national powerhouse pastime, but like they are in a good recruiting spot. They care about football, big stadium, good market. Like they're right there with Oregon. Like if they're just someone we've grown up like the Rose Bowl with them. They're a premier program in the Pac-10, Pac-12 now, and were they a sleeping giant?
They were a sleeping giant, and I think if they go to the Big
Ten,
are they awake?
I mean, they might be, but I don't think right now, because I don't think I've seen enough from Kalen DeBoer on the recruiting trail to tell me that this thing is sustainable and that they're going to be a perennial 10-win-ish team. So I think they kind of overachieved with the talent they had last year, and Kalen DeBoer might be one of those coaches who gets a lot more out of less. But like, if you think that UW is going to be recruiting the same as they did with Peterson and Jimmy Lake after, even with the offensive debacle with Jimmy Lake, like, it's just not going to happen. They're not going to have the dudes. And I just wonder what happens when those defensive dudes are gone and they're just kind of having to rely on a lot of 3-stars and a lot of dudes, and Kalen DeBoer's offensive maestroism. Like, I don't know. I think they kind of overachieved.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. On a separate note, I think we should discuss sleeping giants in the future, because I think you threw out that term and talking about South Florida, and I see people talking about that all the time. I feel like it's the most like overused term these days, and we should get to the bottom of what a sleeping giant truly is, because I feel like Washington kind of feels like that. Like they won a national title, split a national title, right? Or did they win one outright? 91, I want to say. 89, 91, somewhere around there. But I think Washington, they definitely I think they were my second as far as overachieving goes last year.
Yeah, claimed national title in 1991 and 1960.
Okay.
Unclaimed 1990. So, I don't know.
Let's not forget A&K all the way. Sixth Man, all-time classic film of my childhood.
There you go. Who underachieved the most in the Pac-12 last year for you, Matt Green?
I feel like this was kind of easy for me. It has to be the Oregon Ducks. It's year 1 of Dan Lanning, but this team started 8-1, and they just collapsed down the stretch. Not to mention just some absolute head-scratching decisions, 4th down decisions for Dan Lanning. Also, so I feel like they were like the front runner for the Pac-12, and like the loss to Georgia, it's like Georgia was smashing everybody. So it's like you had a 1 loss, and your 1 loss is to the number 1 team in the country. Like the stage was set for like a yeah but about Oregon. You know, like maybe if it had been like with for them to be the 4 seed, like people would have pushed back on that because it's like we saw Georgia, Oregon already. But Oregon was definitely positioned that if they took care of business, they could have gotten into the playoff. And how things shook out, they definitely could have gotten all the way to the 3 seed. Like we had a team that didn't win the Big 12 that got the 3 seed. So I think even though it was year one and like Bo Nix obviously had like a huge improvement from what he was at Auburn, but I don't know. It's kind of like how Tennessee had a great season, but you recalibrated the expectations once you got into November, and so you're almost left with a sour taste of what could have been. And it feels like Oregon could have had a lot more. This team could have won the Pac-12 last year, maybe gotten into the playoff, and they just kind of collapsed down the stretch.
That's fair. I'm interested to see what Troy Franklin looks like. Tez Johnson coming in from Troy. Bo Nix, getting him back, I think, is gigantic because like you lose your OC Kenny Dillingham to take the HC job at Arizona State, but like underachieved. I don't know. It's just funny how we look at Oregon and USC from last year, where it's like Oregon looked at an underachieved and USC looks at an overachieved. But like coming into this year, who do I think is gonna like? I'm a bigger believer in Oregon than the two, if I had to say.
But don't forget, like Cristobal took the Miami job. Like he didn't get fired, so this isn't like Dan Lanning had to come in and rebuild something like Lincoln Riley. Like this was a good program he was taking over.
And they're in the blue chip ratio, and they were last year, so it's fair to be like, yeah, like because everyone just has that memory of the Georgia debacle and the opener, but like they were rolling after that. In the Washington game, they shouldn't have lost at home, and like you said, that was a game that was just littered with just questionable play calling from Dan Lanning and in-game management, but like they finished strong. I don't know. Like I think they probably fit the bill for most underachieved, but guess what? I don't have them as my underachieved most. I think it's Arizona State. 3-9 with that talent and Emory Jones being there for year 93 of his college career. Like we overlooked it because it's Arizona State and but like I just thought their baseline with what they had coming into last year, that 3-9 is just not acceptable. Like that, Arizona's better. You lose to Arizona. You look at just where Stanford was. They were 3-9. You could maybe make the case there, but like they just had too much talent to still be that bad and just be an objective dumpster fire.
When did Herm Edwards get fired? It was like right before the season started or something, right? Like that was like a train wreck. I don't feel like Arizona State, like what were they really supposed to do? What was their over under? Like 5?
I think it was more than that. Let's see. Because Arizona State over under.
They did spoil Washington's season. That's probably the only real thing they can take from last season. Because Washington got hosed by the new format.
6.5.
6.5, so they won 3 games. Like, sure, yeah, they did underachieve, but I don't know. I didn't expect much out of Arizona State. Emory Jones, did you expect much from Emory Jones?
Go bowling. Like I thought they should at least go bowling. Worst case scenario. I think it was a dumpster fire, and I'm also just really curious with Dillingham coming in and really emphasizing the Arizona footprint there, and they bring in Drew Pine from the portal. Jaden Rashada falls into their laps after the NIL debacle with Florida. Maybe he gets in there. They're going to go probably with Trenton Bourguet, who was in for 7 games last year for the Sun Devils. He was all right. He's not the biggest quarterback, so we'll see. 11 TDs. He had his best attribute is probably 71% completion percentage. And Kenny Dillingham seems to have one of the better offensive schemes, quarterback-friendly schemes in the country. So I'm cautiously optimistic. But I look at Arizona State, that they should just be better. I think I'm just perpetually frustrated with Arizona State, that you're close enough to Southern California, you can get some really good players, you're even close enough, they have a lot of Texas kids. Like, they should just, it's a good weather situation, like party school. Like
we grew up with Arizona State being a good program too. Like Jake Plummer.
I'm not mad, I'm disappointed Arizona State.
Like when Georgia had that home and home with Arizona State, like that was like a respectable like series. It was like a ABC primetime game playing at Arizona State. Like that was, I think they were at least ranked in the teens or in the 20s or something. But
is that the game where Noshawn did the crazy leap into the end zone?
Yeah, that was a highlight reel for Noshawn for sure. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, when you got 6 teams finishing like top 20 in the rankings, you're gonna have to have some bad teams down there at the bottom too.
Is there any doubt that UW versus Oregon was the best game last year in the Pac-12?
Yes, that is what I had as my number 1 game. Even though Dan Lanning really just I don't know what he was doing there in fake, was it the fake punt going for it on fourth down or
He just
something?
kept going for it on fourth down. Like he
just questionable stuff from a young coach. But yeah, that was an incredible
a crazy
game.
Pick on the run, like right in the end zone. They could have iced it. Like we were like, oh my god! Like all you had to do was not turn it over, and he just throws a terrible pick, and you're like, did they miss their moment? And yeah, that game had it all. Like it was almost like neither team wanted to close it out and win, but it was a huge win for UW on the road in Autzen.
Yeah, and the other one, Oregon losing to Oregon State. I think Oregon was up like 34-17 in that one, and then Oregon State just came back and won it. So Oregon, a couple heartbreak losses late in the season.
A couple other things to give some love to other teams around the conference that we haven't talked about. Cougs and Oregon State. I was wondering this because Cam Ward came into last year high expectations from Incarnate Ward in Texas. Fun player, had a lot of baby Kyler energy to him, running around and speedster, fun, that kind of thing. And Washington State was not good. Like they won weirdly at Wisconsin, one of the sneaky, crazier upsets last year where it's like, oh, they just went over there and did a Washington State thing where they just win games they shouldn't, and then they just somehow still finish like 5-7, 6-6. But then Oregon State broke through, right? Like they were blanking Florida in the bowl game to cap off what was a great year with pretty subpar quarterback play for Oregon State by and large. Like they won with an elite defense in that conference. Jonathan Smith, one of the better offensive play callers, and doing a lot with his group. They ran the ball extremely well. I just wonder, can they both be up at the same time, Matt Green? Is it a case of like if Oregon State has it figured out, then sorry, Washington State, you can't be the... Because it's like they're the two programs in that conference, so it's like you have to do more with so much less that both of those schools cannot be up at the same time. Is that how you feel too, where it's like Oregon State's really up? I'm just selling all my Washington State stock because I don't see both of them being sustainably near the top of the Pac-12 year over year.
I've never really thought about that. Like, is that a rivalry, Washington State, Oregon State?
It should be, because they're the ones who are getting left out. Like
it feels like it should. Like obviously those in-state rivals are huge, but then it's like Washington, Oregon is also a rivalry. So Washington State, Oregon State might as well be a rivalry. So yeah, let's make that happen. But I guess in our lifetime, like Washington State, they just don't feel like they've ever had like a sustained success. It feels like they've just kind of had pop-up years, like here and there where they're good. So, and then Oregon State, I feel like they were respectable, I don't know, like to like the Steven Jackson era. Like I'm trying to think. Like
the Rogers brothers were really good when they were there. You had Matt
That's
Moore
what, late 2000s, the Rogers brothers?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I remember Ken Simonton and Joey Harrington were on the cover of Sports Illustrated one year when they were both like preseason number 1 and 2, Oregon and Oregon State. But I guess maybe it feels like there's just so much. There's not enough to go around that like Washington and Oregon are usually going to be good. It's doing a lot for Washington State and Oregon State to be good at the same time. And you just look at. Well, I'll wait till we get into kind of expectations, but you look at this like conference and it's very logically set up, kind of like how you think it should be.
Well, that's my expectations for those two, because I was just curious, because I think I'm going to group them together. The other expectation question where we can group them is Cal and Stanford, who maybe they get the invite to the Big Ten because the Big Ten wants the academics there, and you need some close proximity teams when you do these scheduling and these bubbles for USC and UCLA, because I just don't believe that's sustainable for the next 5 to 10 years, that they are the only West Coast teams in this conference, and they're having to do that over and over again. Cal and Stanford, you also don't want to just bring in the other two heavy hitters if you're USC and UCLA. You're like, well, hold on. We don't want our only competition coming from the West Coast to be two other powerhouses that could beat us year over year. Like, we want some, not cupcakes, but also, like, we feel pretty good about beating them every year. You need your Vanderbilts coming in. And I wonder from Cal and Stanford, where it's like, the only time they've really ever been up was when they have Andrew Luck or Aaron Rodgers, and it's like they lucked into just the brainiac superstar quarterback.
Well, Stanford had more good years than just the Andrew Luck years, though. The Christian McCaffrey years also.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, they had to have some kind of star, like Bryce Love, all-time great college running back, where it's like they need those guys to just completely break through and just be so good. They keep this really, really academic focus, great program as a whole running, but like, I don't know, like what should Cal and USC and Stanford fans look at as a sustainable, realistic model in the NIL era? Because I don't know. I just think it's going to be really, really hard for them to compete year over year, and they were both really bad once again this past year.
I would say it can't. I would say it's definitely not the NIL era that's holding Stanford back, because I think with the money that's associated with that program, the alum, I'm sure Stanford has plenty of money. You can debate on how much they want to commit to sports, but I think it's more about the transfer portal, because I've heard their academic requirements and their academic calendar is just very different than every other school. Like, apparently you have to be accepted to the university before you can ever even take an official visit there. Like, it's a more intense academic process. And if you look at, correlation is not causation, right? But you go back to 2010, last year Harbaugh, and then the first 7-8 years of David Shaw, they missed 10 wins one time in an 8-year period. They had a couple of 9-win seasons in 2017 and 2018. 2018 is the year the transfer portal started. 2018, 2019, and they've fallen off a cliff. 4-8, 4-2. I guess that was a 4-win season. That was an okay season. You don't really know how 2020 actually ends up. But then 3-9 and 3-9 in the last couple of years. I wonder if it's the portal more than anything that's kind of bringing Stanford back, because common wisdom, you hear Georgia Tech fans complain about it, we don't have enough players that can handle the academic load that it takes to go here. Stanford is an elite institution, and they've had their good years of playing football, so clearly that can't be it. It can't just be the academic, stress of going to Stanford or having enough players that can qualify to go to school here. So I feel like they're kind of always defying logic when they were good. So I don't really know what to expect, because it seems like you should probably be more like Northwestern, and you have your 3-9 seasons, and then you pop up and win 7 or 8 one year, and then you go back down. Or Northwestern's one's maybe 9, 10 some years, but maybe you have something like that. I feel like what they were from 2010 to 2016, that honestly seems more like the anomaly.
That's fair. Another couple teams here in the Pac-12. The biggest one, I think, it's just going to be jarring if you're a Colorado Buff fan, right? You were the worst team, and it wasn't even close last year. They were god-awful in 2022. Just god-awful everywhere. And now you have, 70 dudes out of the program in that time frame from what you saw last year to so many new faces. You don't know how long Deion's going to be at Colorado. You just know there's just an unbelievable explosion of talent that have arrived. You're now the coolest school. I would argue they're the coolest school in the conference now. Denver's a fun place. They're kind of a
Boulder.
But what I'm saying, you're not far from Denver and Boulder. There's a way.
Boulder might be more fun than Denver, honestly.
Yeah, but we've seen the share of the national title, the Cordell Stewarts of the world, the Chris Browns in the early 2000s. We've seen the best of the best with Colorado football. They have won national titles, share of national titles. They could get right back there. It depends on really how long Deion is going to be at Colorado. But how do you even come to grips with any kind of normal expectations as a Buffs fan right now? Because you're going to go from one of maybe the worst Power 5 team last year to a team that has bowl expectations, crazy schedule. You're recruiting your ass off. You're killing it in the portal. You might have the best DB in college football in a year in Travis Hunter if he develops under Deion, who was the #1 overall player in
Cormani McClain too.
Yeah, Cormani, there's just, I don't even know what to think if you're a Colorado fan, because you're am I going to be upset if we go 6-6 with the talent? Am I going to be upset if year 2 of Deion we were only 8-4, 9-3? How do you even parse through that as a Colorado fan? It's just got to be jarring over a 2 to 3 year time span.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's, but you don't have like unrealistic expectations or anything, right? Like, so I think anything that happens is is good, right? Like you just went 1-11. So yeah, if you go to a bowl game next year, like in this kind of stacked Pac-12, like I'd be a little surprised if they made a bowl game, honestly, just because they were so bad last year, and obviously this team is going to be unrecognizable, but like that's kind of difficult to build an entire football team. Brand new team in 1 year. We've literally never seen that happen. So like we have no idea what to expect. It's pretty unprecedented what Deion is doing with Colorado right now. But like, I mean, no. I mean, who in the world could be unsatisfied with 8-9 wins in year one or year two?
I'm not saying unsatisfied. I'm just saying how jarring it's going to be. So like, you were just used to, you're like, okay, maybe this is what we are with McIntyre, with Carl Durrell, where you're like, man, maybe we're just kind of not who, maybe the days of the 90s are long gone and we can't get back. Like maybe that was it. We're just not going to ever get there. To now being like, actually Deion's going to put you in the blue chip ratio in the next 2 to 3 years and you actually will have enough talent to make the college football playoff maybe next year. Like that is a possibility now. Like it's just got to be so weird as a Colorado fan.
It's a greater than 0% possibility, but I feel like how possible is that even to do? You know what it kind of feels like is the Ole Miss, the Robert Kimdichie class of Ole Miss, that it was kind of like you had to do everything, get Laramie Tunsil, Laquan Treadwell, do just everything to get this ridiculous class, and you kind of like, okay, we got 3 years to like win something. And they did go to a New Year's Six Bowl one of those years, but like once that was over, granted there was a bunch of scandal and Hugh Freeze was gone, so it's hard to know like what that was going to turn into. But it kind of felt like as soon as that Kimdichie and Tunsil class was gone, Ole Miss was kind of back to where they were supposed to be in the SEC West. So with Deion, it's not a recruiting class, but it kind of could be. And if he signs a great class next year, he's got a 2-3 year window of making Colorado better. And if they win 8 games year 2, I mean, is Deion not like the hottest coach in college football, that he just took a 1-win team to 8 wins in like 2 seasons? Like, and it's just the energy, just the personality, everything, that the aura that is Deion Sanders, that you just know teams are going to, big time programs, just they had to see it done. You know, they had to see it for themselves. They couldn't take the leap of faith and and get the guy from the HBCU. But if he proves it, like shows any sort of sign at Colorado, he's going to take the next biggest job. Like, I mean, it's not like any criticism to Deion or anything. It's just that's the name of the game. Like this whole 60 Minutes interview with him, like he's talking all about the city of Jackson and what he's doing for these kids, his program. But the guy asks him straight up, like, would you go for another job? And he's just like, I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said I wouldn't consider another job. Like Deion's just that guy that's just going to tell the truth. So you wouldn't be surprised if they do anything positive that he's somewhere else in like 3 years.
I mean, I've said forever that I think he is the successor to Nick Saban at Bama. So if he thinks, I just think he's the successor there.
That's bold right there. I think Glenn Schumann is the successor to Nick
Sexy
Saban.
Enough. No, you got to go big. And
I don't know if they win if Georgia wins a couple more national championships with Schumann being like the Kirby's number 2. Like, I mean, who else would you rather have than the guy that's learned from Kirby at this point? And he went to Alabama. He is an Alabama guy, Glenn Schumann.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily matter. Nick Saban, obviously, a West Virginia, Kent State guy. It's not
That's
like
true.
The two actual.
Hey, if you want to get your Kirby, it matters.
It's just funny because like so many teams are so obsessed with that, and I'm like, who are the best 2 SEC coaches of all time? Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, both.
Steve Spurrier and Kirby Smart. So there you go.
I mean, they're in there though. They're in the top 6.
Hey, Kirby could be up there when it's all said and done. But you also seen guys. But I think it is a great sales pitch. If you can pull it off, it's incredible to have. Like, have Harbaugh at Michigan. It's like, what better sales pitch is there? Like, I went here. Like, I thought this was the best school. So if you can do that, it's not the most important thing. But that's why Tennessee fans, if Brent Venables doesn't work out, I don't know. Oklahoma could be knocking on Josh Heupel's door. Who knows?
There's bad blood there still. I don't think it
between Heupel and Oklahoma.
Yeah, he was fired. Like I'm not worried about the Oklahoma thing with him. Everything I've heard is that if Heupel were to not work out long term, it's because the NFL gave him a job. Like if he leaves, I think it's an NFL job. I don't think Heupel would leave Tennessee and the resources here for any other job right now. I think a college job. It's an NFL job that would pull him.
Could be.
There you go. The most underrated player, Matt Green, in the conference. I have Michael Penix Jr. Who do you have?
I would say this guy was the most overrated player going into the 2022 season, and he came out of it the most underrated player. That's Cam Rising.
Cam Rising, we are completely different on this.
Cam Rising was getting like Heisman love and like dark horse, and he wasn't that guy. Like you're not that guy, pal. You know. But I feel like people kind of started to poo-poo Cam Rising last year, and all he does is win, man. Back-to-back Pac-12 championships. He's a gamer, makes plays with his legs. He's a tough quarterback, and he's still a pretty solid passer. He's not a Heisman winner, but he kind of recalibrate. You're like, okay, he's not a Heisman type quarterback, but he's still a really good quarterback, and Utah's a really good team. So I feel like he kind of went from overrated to underrated. So yeah, give me Cam Rising.
That's fascinating because I actually have Cam Rising as the most overrated player.
Oh,
This is brutal. Apologies to the Rising family. He was 10th in the Pac-12 in passing last year. He was 9th in 40-plus yard passes among all quarterbacks in the Pac-12 last year. He was 5th in the conference in total QBR. You just look up and down where I'm like, nah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was elite. Bo Nix was elite. Caleb Williams
What are your passing numbers? Because, I mean, this guy was 26 touchdowns to 8 picks. I mean, this was a loaded conference with quarterbacks, too. So is being 8th in some, like, what is he 8th and 9th in?
He was like maybe the 6th, 7th best quarterback in his own conference. I just don't think Utah, you lose at Florida. There was some dumb stuff there. I think Utah is like this machine, and obviously Dalton Kincaid and their dual tight end sets and just how physical they are all across the board matters. But I feel like Utah wins. They're in a weird way like the bizarro Heupel Vols, where it's like they can just plug because their identity is so sewn up everywhere else, where it's like Whittingham's been there so long. He's established his culture. Their defense first, ground and pound, physical. We're going to put in the tight ends. We're going to knock the crap out of you. Like, you just have to be a pretty competent quarterback. Like, they put dudes in Huntley right before him who had a lot of success at Utah. Like, I don't think it really matters who plays quarterback at Utah. I think Utah's just going to walk into 9 or 10 wins. I don't think it matters. I think Cam
they're
Rising
a
was
solid. They're definitely a very solid like identity and everything like that. But I mean, you look at their running game last year. Like, they had a few guys but they didn't have a star. Like, they had a couple guys like 3 different guys had 500 yards rushing last year. One guy had over 600. Like, Cam Rising had 460 himself. Like,
can you name a game where they won because of Cam Rising? I can name games that Michael Penix won for Washington, that Caleb Williams won for USC. Like,
but I'm saying I'm not going to say Michael Penix, or I'm not going to say Caleb Williams is underrated. Like, he's a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
I think Bo Nix got a lot of love. I think even Michael Penix got a lot of love. I think Cam Rising was talked about, but like you just said, there's so many good quarterbacks in this conference. I think being like the 8th one doesn't necessarily mean you aren't good. Like, this guy threw 26 touchdowns, 8 picks, 64% completions. Like, there were 3,000 yards. Like, it's not like he was bad. Like, he just wasn't like the Heisman, like, national championship quarterback. Like, that I think I predicted Utah to go to the playoff preseason last year. He was 20-5 touchdowns to picks, but I think he didn't start like 3 or 4 games last year. So it was kind of like people were kind of extrapolating, like, okay, what can he do as the full-time starter? And he didn't. I mean, he was better, but he's good. He's just not great. And so I think he gets. And you're proving my point. I think he gets a little too much hate because of it.
I don't know, man. He's fine. Utah's just fine with whoever it is under center. I'm just not really worried. If I was Utah, I wouldn't worry about quarterback. I would just give no money in NIL to quarterback. Just be like, we're putting it on the offensive line, tight end.
But you're acting
defense.
like he's like Trent Dilfer over here. Like he was. I mean, he's been really good the last couple
I wouldn't
of
say
years.
he's really good. I think he's okay. Rising's fine. He's fine. You know who's really good? Bo Nix is really good. Caleb Williams is really good. Michael Penix is really good.
Last 2 years, he's thrown 46 touchdowns and 13 picks. That's a really good quarterback.
I don't know. He just doesn't do it for me. He doesn't move the needle, Matt Green. He's fine.
That's fair. I mean, in terms of if I'm ranking them like preseason, like he might not still be in the top 5, but this Pac-12 is pretty loaded with quarterbacks. You want my most overrated player?
Yes.
My most overrated is Tanner McKee, because this guy got drafted and he's not good. He's not a good player. Like 13 touchdowns, 8 picks. Like how did this guy get drafted? Like he's every quarterback that goes to Stanford is just like, oh, he's got good height and weight. He's ranked highly kind of high school. Yeah, let's draft him. Like I don't
230.
I just never saw it. Davis Mills too. It's like 5-star number 1 quarterback. Like was he even good in college? Like he's fine. Like I don't know. I don't see it. So I'm going Tanner McKee. Catching a stray over here from me.
Man, that's fair. Matt Green, final question here on the in the Pac-12. That might be a unfortunate slip there at the Big 12, Pac-12 right there. Most difficult spot for this coach in 2023. Which coach do you think going into this season is in the most difficult spot?
I'm going to say Chip Kelly.
Oh, wow.
Because I think UCLA is good, and I think going to the Big Ten, that extra money could make this program even better. But just in terms of like what to expect in 2024, like they were really good. But I'm looking at like those like 6 ranked teams, right, that are kind of all there together, and it feels like they're going to be the worst one again in 2024. Like I don't necessarily see them getting better. Whereas I feel like you're at UCLA, you're Chip Kelly, that it's like this is a progression. Like, okay, we won 9 games this year.
4 last year.
Yeah, they won 9 games, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, you could make the argument that like Oregon State and Washington, like last year is the best that they could do, and they're going to come back down. But
he gets Dante Moore in the fold.
That's fair, but I don't know. I don't know how much better UCLA is going to be, because I mean the offense was really good last year, and I mean, they still lost 4 games. So, I mean, they lost a couple of close ones. So, different bounces of the ball, things could change. But I really like how USC and Oregon are looking going into this season. And then, like, I'm not counting out Washington with Penix Jr. and not even Oregon State. And then I didn't even name the team that won the conference last year, which is Utah. Like, that we just always forget about.
That's fair. They were sneaky. I thought they'd be better in the 2023 class rankings. 46th. Composite ranking on 247, even with Dante Moore there. I don't know.
In the future, yeah, once you start talking, 5 years in the Big Ten, like that could change things. But I think as far as next year goes, I'm not sure how much better they are.
I don't know. I just look at it, if I'm a UCLA admin, it's like, this is pretty great. We've seen, like, they're not even filling out the ball. Like, it's really hard to get people excited and go to these UCLA football games. And Chip Kelly's top 10 coach in the sport. Like, there's a lot of programs that would kill to have Chip Kelly running their program. Like, it's kind of a gift that he's just cool being your coach.
That's a hot take right there, though. Top 10 coach in the sport?
Yeah.
I think we need to have our coaching rankings, sir. I don't know if you believe that.
I do. Chip Kelly, I mean, the dude just wins. Like, the guy is still his offense is still one of the best year over year. Like, it's sustainable. Like, with how much the sport has changed over the last 15 years, his offense, it doesn't matter. The dude evolves and wins with what he's got, wins with a variety of quarterbacks, players.
His offensive, prowess is unquestioned, but I mean, you taking him over Kyle Whittingham? Over Lincoln Riley?
Over Lincoln? Yes.
That's bold.
I think I'm taking him over Lincoln. Yeah. I think close.
I think we got to come up with our rankings.
That's another evergreen podcast topic. But yeah. For me though, I think it's either Lincoln Riley, because I think Lincoln's kind of set up to fail this year. I actually feel bad for Lincoln, where he went ahead, like he's ahead of schedule, and I just don't think they're going to live up to expectations. I think that defense is still going to be limited. I think it's going to be really hard for Caleb Williams to live up to the hype for him, because he wins the Heisman last year. Expectations are through the roof. And I think the Pac-12 is better than it was a year ago. I think they're just going to have a really hard time, USC that is, being better than what they were a year ago. I think they actually take a step back a little bit, and I don't think they're in the Pac-12 title game. I think Oregon's better. I think Washington's better. I think Oregon State could be right there again. Utah, I think, is going to be right there. I have my doubts, and we'll see what kind of team Colorado is. But, I don't know. I think they're set up for failure, and I think it's just not like they're going to go 5-7, miss the bowl game. I just think it feels like a 9-3, 8-4 type of deal for USC and a slight regression and not competing for the CFP. But you look at every article about who's the biggest CFP dark horse. It's like everyone just wants to throw it. It's open. USC, this is a moment for them. I'm like, I don't know. There's just so much preseason CFP hype for USC, and I think he's most doomed for Lincoln, there he goes again. Can't make it through the CFP. Can't win with a Heisman quarterback. Where have we seen this? With Kyler, with Jalen Hurts, with not saying, am I blanking on before Kyler?
Baker?
Baker, yeah. Here we go again. That's just is this narrative that he's having to deal with until he breaks through, and I just don't think they're a breakthrough team this year.
But do you know what all those teams have in common? They all went to the playoff.
They did.
So I'm just saying that offense can get you to the playoff. It might not be able to win you any games in the playoff, but I don't know. I don't want you to lose any sleep over Lincoln Riley, though. You shouldn't feel bad. I think he's doing fine. I've seen the house he's living in. I think he's doing well. But I don't know. I think that's a good point in terms of what to expect in year 2. But I think I don't know. I think they're capable of being better than they were a year ago because I think they kind of were a year ahead of schedule. So I wouldn't count them out for making the playoff or winning the Pac-12 or anything like that.
All right. Well, that's all I've got, Matt Green. Anything you'd like to add as we wrap up here on a Tuesday night?
That's all I got, man. Congratulations to the Vols going to the College World Series.
Very classic.
It was Omaha. That was a great post. That's classic. Tennessee fans probably waiting to use that, I'm sure. But good luck in Omaha. It's no longer Rosenblatt Stadium, right? They got a new one a couple years ago, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but that's gotta be weird just living in Omaha and just knowing that 1 week a year it just turns into a madhouse and then everything.
Something is awesome about that to me. When in Georgia state football, it was the whole road to the dome. Everyone's trying to get to the dome, and it was just that's for the championship to be the same place every year. I want to say softball is something like that in the state of Georgia, that they play in Columbus, Georgia every year or something. I think it's in the same place every single year. So there's something cool about that. Obviously Final Four, rotating sites is cool, bring the Final Four all over the country. But something about you're going to Omaha that I don't know. They've got a whole production to it. They're going to do it right there every year. But it's cool. I'll have to keep an eye out on it, if nothing else, just to make sure Tennessee loses.
There you go.
They know who they're playing? Game
LSU.
1? LSU? Okay.
Yeah, Paul Skeens. It's gonna be a fun, highly competitive, insane. There's gonna be some fan fights here. This is it's gonna be ruthless with LSU and Tennessee fans merging in Omaha for that game 1.
It's probably more on the Tennessee fans. They're a real classless bunch, from what I hear.
All right. For that guy, Matt Green, down there in Tequila, Georgia. For myself up here in Knoxville, Tennessee. That is all we've got. And Matt Green, you have yourself a great rest of your night, and I will talk to you next week.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.